Hey there, Dr. Drew here. Welcome to this special series here in Beyond Transitions, focusing on overcoming trauma from your faith transition. Trauma is such a misunderstood yet big obstacle for people whenever they are transitioning out of Mormonism or any faith that they've been a part of with deep beliefs. Therefore, I'm going to give you a 5-video series over the next weeks that you can access and help you understand and identify first, is trauma part of what's going on with you and might be holding you back in your happy and joyful transition out of Mormonism? We need to identify that first. But then the following weeks, the next 4 videos in this series, I'm going to give you practical skills based on different trauma-related issues that you might be facing. So please do like and share and comment on this so many people who are searching for these tools can access them. All right, first, let's get in and talk about trauma. Trauma is seriously so misunderstood, and we really do need to wrap our mind around what does it even mean. I've been trained as a trauma expert, went through all the certification process and EMDR and studied heavily in brain spotting with the creator of it, David Grand, and have gotten a really good understanding, yet also realizing how much we don't understand in regards to trauma. But I've worked with experts from all around the world and understanding the neuroscience, the neuroanatomy, the physiology, everything that goes in to trauma. And the result of all of that, for me, really is to say, it affects us in so many different ways. You see, the big problem we run into whenever we try to understand trauma is we only think first about combat, war. In fact, whenever I, was really focused and just working in the area of trauma, people would say, oh, wow, so you work with veterans and people in war all the time? No, less than 5% of my clients actually are war veterans or from combat. The majority are from other types of traumas. Now, I like to break it down into big T's and little T's. Dr. Rob Scaer, who is a retired neurologist, really talks a lot about this in his book that I'll reference here, and you will hear trauma experts talk about the difference between big T's and little T's. Big T's are the traumas that the DSM-5 or the diagnostic manual recognize as leading into PTSD. They recognize the big T's as trauma. These are times when you feel like your life has been threatened. You've witnessed a horrific crime and felt like you then are going to be hurt. Sexual violence, any physical violence, where you feel like your life is in harm or you have no control over your body in that situation and you fear death. Essentially, those are the big traumas, right? And they're horrible. And I'm not here to say, oh, well, the little traumas and big traumas, they're the same thing. They're very different. But just because you may have experienced a big trauma and another person a little trauma doesn't mean the outcomes of those traumas are worse one than the other. So I want to be really clear on that. Now, focusing on what is little trauma anyway. Little traumas are when you feel like you've been controlled or harassed or emotionally and verbally abused or condescended to, made to feel like you're less than or told that you are less than, poked fun at. Those are little traumas, told that you're not good enough, or physical things about yourself. But I really like to look also at little traumas is when you have your voice and you have choice taken away from you, or you're not able to exercise your voice and your choice. You don't feel empowered at all. So what happened in my own personal experience, and I've seen this happen time after time for people who are trying to leave Mormonism. For me, it really was feeling like I didn't have a voice. During my transition, that took over 3 years to really come out about this, I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. I felt like I needed to shut up about it. And I totally underestimated the real love and trust my wife had in me, because hindsight 2020, I should have told her where I was at. But I was afraid. I was afraid of losing my family. I was afraid of what would happen and all the consequences, so I had to shut up. Also, I did raise questions to different leaders, and it was recommended to me that I figure it out on my own, but not open that discussion up to other people. I didn't have a voice. Many people have felt that. Maybe not everyone who's going through a transition, but I definitely felt that, especially because I was in leadership positions where I really felt like I needed to just shut up. And after time, not feeling like I had a voice actually was pretty traumatizing. Okay? So that was a little T that I experienced. All right, but also I did feel emotionally abused through the whole process. But here's the thing. With trauma that we must understand, whether it's PTSD-like symptoms resulting from big traumas or little traumas, it can be overcome. You don't have to live feeling like trauma is still going on in your life for the rest of your life. And you see, that is what happens in the brain. Whenever you've experienced big trauma or a lot of little traumas, it is stuck in your emotional brain or in your limbic system, an emotional memory. An emotional memory, it cannot feel like it's something that happened and is no longer happening. And that is a tricky thing with trauma, is it makes the brain feel like it's something that's still happening. Therefore, you can't trust the world. You can't trust people in power positions. You can't trust anyone. You need to feel afraid. You need to feel scared because your brain is trying to protect you. The emotional memory, okay, is communicating with the amygdala that there's something wrong here. And then you get physiological reaction. You struggle to use your prefrontal cortex to then think rationally. And that's not your fault. That's what trauma does. It tells you that things are still happening that are threatening you. Now, when you move through trauma, the memories move up through your hippocampi into what's called narrative memory. When it moves into narrative memory, it is then something that happened and no longer feeling like you're in threat. And you can't just tell the brain, hey, dude, like this happened, get over it. You can't do that. These memories literally have to shift and process through the brain. And there are steps I'm going to take you through. I'm going to talk to you about things. No, this is not therapy. And if things do come up where you feel like, oh, wow, I need to visit with a licensed professional, please find a licensed therapist in your area. I'm going to coach you on some things that you can do to move forward. But if there's symptoms you need to find relief for, please do reach out to a licensed therapist who's licensed in your state to work with you on that, okay? So here's some things to think about. You've probably heard of religious trauma syndrome. Okay, I'm going to put a link to that. Marlene, a colleague in the field, has done a great job. There's another YouTube video about religious trauma syndrome that she talks a lot about. And I'm taking some of that and some of what I've experienced while coaching a lot of clients through these situations and myself, and with the latest trauma research. I'm bringing that all in here together over the next 4 videos to help you understand how to move beyond this. But I want you to understand a few things. And these are things we're going to talk about. When I am talking about the trauma from your faith transition, these are maybe some things that you've felt, and see if you identify with any of these. Feeling isolated or feeling like you've lost your family and friends. Maybe you feel like you're grieving what you lost. That's a big one for a lot of people, is you're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I knew how everything was going to be. I knew about heaven and I knew about the afterlife and I knew my purpose here. And I had community. There's so many things that you have to grieve. All right? But there's a very positive way, positive growth that we can look at this. And I can't wait to get there with you. Feeling maybe like you've been lied to, or like you've had your mind controlled, or been part of mind control games. Feeling confusion. All of a sudden, maybe now you're more indecisive. Feeling physiological responses, like this visceral response whenever you drive past a chapel or you hear somebody say something specifically and it triggers you, a physiological response. When I was trained in brain spotting, became certified and consultant in brain spotting, that was what David Grant talked a lot about. This is a physiological technique with psychological consequences. Trauma is held a lot of times physiologically. And I'll talk about what that means and some things you can do to work past that. Also, maybe you've experienced insomnia, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep. Maybe you wake up early and you can't get back to sleep. What about your appetite? I've seen it many times where people will overeat, undereat, have no appetite, skip meals for several days, and no, it's not because they're fasting to fix things. It is because they physiologically and biologically cannot eat. It is a real thing that goes on. Maybe you feel this lack of meaning or lack of purpose or direction. And that creates a lot of confusion. That creates a lot of feeling of despair. Lastly, and probably one of the biggest things for some people, is I'm sure there's been a lot of people, or there will be a lot of people who are great to you. And we need to focus on that. But also there's people who say things. There's people who don't quite understand where you're coming from. Or they're just flat out being jerks and judgmental about it. And that can create some little traumas that really impact you. Or maybe you've been someone of influence, someone that people trust, and now you feel like people don't trust you as much in that realm of Mormonism. Any friends, or maybe it's affected you professionally. I want you to speak confidently. I want you to feel confident in who you are. Feel like you have meaning. Feel like you have purpose. Feel like the world is a place that you can find many trusting relationships. You can trust people in authority. I want to help you get there. Don't take my word for it, but over these next 4 videos, I'm going to go through these things, break them up, go into depth on each one of them, and give you some very practical skills to move past this. And again, I really want to make it clear that if there's things that activate you, that bring up other past experiences and bringing up other symptoms there, please do visit with a licensed therapist. But try some of these coaching techniques and see where it gets you. And we'll help you truly move past this transition and experience a beautiful life, a life full of joy. That is what I want to help you do. And so it's going to be very positive. This video, to be honest with you, like talking about these different, outcomes or things you might be experiencing, signs that it might be there, that you have some trauma that needs to be dealt with. Man, it's hard to talk about this. It's not fun. But as we get into practical skills, principles you can implement, that is a huge payoff. And I just hope that you can feel that you have voice, that you have choice, feel empowered. And you can't talk yourself into it. It takes some work, but you can get there. We need you to feel that so you can have that life of joy beyond this transition. All right. Look for the video next week. Please do subscribe to this. As you subscribe to it, it'll give you notifications. Also, it helps more people be able to see this and like and comment on it as well. Thank you so much for your time. If you have specific questions, please do let us know. Email us, drew@drdrewbrazier.com. That way I can make sure to address those, or in our Facebook page as well, Beyond Transitions. All right, we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week. Think about these things, get ready to learn next time, and we'll see you on the next video.